Hey, everybody. Jessica Davis here, editorial director of Channel 80E, and I'm here today with a couple of the partners from Cogent Growth Partners, an M&A advisory firm to the IT services space. And these guys are experts on mergers and acquisitions for MSPs and technology service providers, all kinds of service providers in the IT services space. So we're really lucky to be able to talk to them on a monthly basis. It's very exciting. This is our second edition. I'm here with Rick Murphy and Bruce Teichman, and we talked about this last time about what the question of today would be, and it's going to be all about quality. What is a quality MSP? But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about trends that we're seeing in the market first, about MSPs and how they're doing. I know that there was a new service leadership report that came out recently showing that revenues were a little bit down, even though profitability was a little bit up. And Peter Kajawa of Service Leadership was noting that maybe it's because it's an election year this year, and there's a lot of uncertainty. He's seen some correlations, and I know Rick, you were talking about what's going on with small businesses today, and how that's impacting
Yeah, I
MSPs.
think actually pinged Peter actually when I saw that he put some stuff up on LinkedIn, and I had seen that before. And you got to really give that a macroeconomics picture. It's not just about interest rates. It's small businesses across the country. I'm not going to go with worldwide, but certainly in the United States, have taken a hit in the past 2 or 3 years. Certainly in the past year or so, and as inflation and interest rates and what have you happen, there's government policies. Pick the state of your choice with things they're doing with labor and hourly wages and what have you. It's put a big pinch, I think, on just small businesses, small and medium SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses, which are the core client of the bulk of what Peter's constituency is. Most of the internet services companies are serving small and medium-sized businesses. And if the small and medium-sized business isn't doing very well, they're not going to buy more stuff. They're not going to enhance their network. They're not going to have any money to do different things they want to do. They're just going to kind of subsist. So I think, that's why the revenue hasn't really gone down, so to speak. It hasn't been a downturn, but it hasn't been an upturn. And It's just been kind of trundling along. That's my opinion. Bruce, what do you think about that?
I agree with that. And I think also there's been a lot of focus internally because of, just rising costs, generally cost of labor. A lot of MSPs have been examining their tool set and how can they be more efficient, save a little money. So maybe on the same revenue, they're making a little more profit. It's starting, some of this AI is starting to come in and, speed things up and take away less time resources, believe it or not. It's in its infancy, obviously. But I sat in a session on that recently on how AI inside the MSP's operations are starting to save some money, really.
That's interesting. And so you believe that it will have an impact going forward on profitability and efficiency?
Sure. Yeah. I think all these technologies that help you make it do it, faster, smarter, cheaper.
And I think you have that backwards, right? It's really about efficiency and then profitability.
Yeah, correct.
Right? The more efficient you are, the more work product you can generate. I know a lot of people hate that term, but it's definitely true. So the more work product you can generate with less people, then you're more cost efficient. So your margins are better, and hopefully everybody on their team prospers, and it passes through to the employees and so forth, and certainly keeps customer costs in line and things like that. I think some of it's out of necessity, Bruce, also, right? I think some of it you have to do, to be able to maintain profitability. Because again, if your customer base is sort of flat and or maybe descending in terms of what they can do, the end customer of the individual TSP, then then you're going to have to make sure if you want to maintain profit, you can't just keep spending money on things that are more gambles than sure things.
Great insights. And it brings me to the topic of today, which, certainly quality MSPs are probably looking at some of these technologies. Investors in MSPs are looking for quality MSPs to invest in, to acquire, and there may be fewer of them than they would like to
Yeah.
be in the market today. Which begs the question, which we talked about last time, which is, what is a quality MSP? And I know that there are probably a number of factors that add up to what a quality MSP is. I'm wondering if each of you might give me your top 3 factors for what makes a quality MSP.
First one
Yeah,
to go first.
I can do that. Yeah, we mentioned it last time that it's hard to find these quality, mature MSPs. There's just less of them, right? And part of that, I think, in a word, it's this concept of the lifestyle business also. So a lot of the smaller MSPs certainly are kind of running their business, kind of lifestyle. It's not, about the business. It's not about profitability and culture and leadership and understanding, all their metrics. They're like, hey, I make some good money. I am having fun. I help people, and it's very, kind of general. And a lot of the smaller firms, certainly ones that are, 5 employees or less, or even, sort of up to 10, I think have that lifestyle mentality. Then you take those, even at that size, who have decided, hey, this is a real business, and I need to learn how to, maximize that and be efficient and raise the quality and so forth. They're joining peer groups. They're talking to advisors, and just the idea that they want to do it is a great step, right? So I think that definitely makes a quality MSP. These folks that are out there sort of educating themselves and having made the decision that they're going to improve their business. So I know that's kind of high level, but I think that's a big one. So part of that, as I said, is just this decision to invest in management, right, and leadership and culture, which is, again, not really hard KPI type stuff, but that's where it starts. Because if you have that infrastructure in place, then you're taking care of your employees, which are, again, lifeblood of the business, and giving them direction and setting up the proper kind of incentives. And all these can be sort of complicated, right? Whether it's sales employees or engineering resources or what have you. So investing in your people and investing in like I said, sort of maybe some middle management. You got to get to a certain size to get there, but just one assistant. It's very hard for this single owner run business who's still doing the technology, doing the selling, doing the everything, to have that sort of maturity.
Can't do everything by yourself.
Can't do everything by yourself, right? Yeah. It's lonely at the top. So I think that's one thing. I think another big one, we talked a lot about it last time, but it's still true, is just this whole financial structure that these companies use. And what makes a quality MSP is someone who has spent a little bit of time understanding that from their own financials, from their own P&L, they need to be able to recognize, so they can operate it better, things like, how much do I make on recurring revenue, and what is recurring versus one time, and product margins and subscription margins and all these things, doing it in that accrual fashion, right, as well. So cash accounting paints a false picture of your profitability month over month, quarter over quarter. Very hard to make good decisions. So I think a quality MSP is someone who sat back and said, you know what, I'm going to get this right. I'm going to invest in a little time. Maybe they don't have a full-time CFO, but they have a fractional CFO. They're outsourcing it, or they have just a great bookkeeper / accountant, right? I'm working with a company right now, pretty small, under a $2 million business, but they have like rock solid financials, and it has helped them manage the business, and I think deliver.
And their valuation.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, deliver for their customers, which is what they're in business for. But because they're talking to me, we're in deal mode, right? And there's an M&A opportunity, and it is worth more to the buyer because they're less uncertain, right, about what they're looking at. There's a certainty and clarity that came with the right kind of bookkeeping, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they see that as quality. And it is. So there's a couple of things right there. But maybe there's some others, but Rick, I'll pass to you and see if you have thoughts.
I have a couple more. I think that, when we talk with our clientele, we work with all sorts of private equity groups. We work with private equity sponsored operating companies, work with operating companies that are on their way to wanting to be sponsored by a PE company, and And some smaller companies are just kind of really getting going, in that $5 million, $6 million neighborhood. They're trying to get bigger and see the future, and usually run by some younger people who are a little newer at it. And I think the biggest thing that our buyer community looks at, and I think it's something that you can make money on by yourself, having nothing to do with doing an acquisition, is sales process. Sales processes and sales process, which is stuff you can learn. A lot of people that are technicians that build and buy these companies, they don't have the skill set around sales a lot, and they're trying to hire it and make that happen. And those companies don't really have good sales process. We hear a lot about people say, well, I get all my business from referral. I don't use contracts. That's a whole show by itself. But the short version of that is, well, the biggest asset you have is your customer relationships, and how solid are those customer relationships is contract dependent to some degree. So again, you look at an operational maturity level with some, do they have good sales processes or not? Is all their business coming from what we call hunting versus from farming, where you've got referrals and you're farming current business and growing that and getting referrals? That's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you couple that with a robust hunting sales process, then you've got a really good viable business, and that's worth more to anybody that would be a suitor. So that's one thing. I think part and parcel of that, when you think about that, generally, you see a lot of businesses that they're not selling at decent rates. They're kind of giving it away, or they're not really being aggressive with their price points. The old we'll make it up in volume trick, right? What happens though is again, when you're looking at a mesh, when in any kind of transactions, certainly, but let's forget transactions for a minute. Just, hey, you want to make more money as a company. You want to do better as a company. A lot of things we talk about, by the way, have nothing to do with buying or selling your company in day one. And they have everything to do about making money now, because if you can prove that you're making money, well, then it's easier to, at any point in time, think about selling your company, right? Or somebody comes along, knocks on the door, says, hey, I'm interested, and you like them, which is a big part of it too. And again, probably a subject for another day. Assuming you get along and the culture fits, well, then, golly gee whiz, you're kind of ready because you already know what you're doing, and you've got a company that's more viable because you can prove how much money you make. So I think getting rid of the underperforming customers, a lot of people are terrified. They have what I like to call a top-line disease. There's a whole bunch of other associated maladies that go along with that. Again, for another day, we could talk about, that creates a staph infection, and often a staph infection has to be cured with a credit line addiction. So we can talk about that another day. It's kind of finance and a kind of transaction therapy all at once. But, the idea that a lot of people we see, they have, their customers are concentrated on let's say customers are $5,000 a month or more, and they've got a number of those, and customers above that size. But they might only have 20 of those customers in that neighborhood, and all of their other customers are below $1,000 a month. Or they have a bunch of customers, like hundreds or dozens and dozens and dozens, that are below 500 a month. And is it actually more efficient to send the invoice out or not? Are you really making money on those customers? To some degree, it can be argued you can, but at a certain size, when the suitor is larger, the ability for those engineers to mesh well with each other. You got engineers used to working on sub $1,000 a month type customers with that type of skill set, that type of frequency, and they're suddenly thrust into having to work on customers that are doing 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever grand a month in business, and be part of that team, different teams. So do they actually mesh well? And can the larger company service the smaller customers? So the engineers in the bigger company, they're not used to working for guys that are $500 a month. They don't know how to treat them. They treat them like somebody. So it's an oil and water problem. So what we find is really focusing on your customers. The sales process is one thing, but who are you selling to? At what price points are you selling it to them? And are you getting enough business out of that customer for that customer to be a viable customer as part of the customer list, which is the main thing that a buyer's buying, is the customers and the employees. So you got to get the one that's 50-50. It's probably about half and half. I'm buying the customers, I'm buying the people. Customers are probably 60-40 more important than the people, but they're right up there with each other. So let's get the customer part right.
Very good. That's like a ton of low-hanging fruit for MSPs to go after right there, right?
Yes.
Evaluating your customers, and seeing if they're really a good customer for you, looking at your pricing, focusing on customers, focusing on sales, and also focusing on your financials and how you're reporting them, how your accounting is working, the type of accounting that you're using to showcase the quality of your business. That's
And let's
a lot of stuff right
let's bring
there.
that full circle for a second. Let's bring that full circle real
Yeah.
quick. So the interesting thing is, if you're focused on sales process, how do you know you're not selling enough to a customer? How do you know your prices are too low? Well, you have to have the financial acumen to get into your numbers and see, if I have 50 people working for my company and we're doing we're doing $100,000 a month. Well, you can't run a business. My business will be bankrupt, right? Just to be blatantly obvious. So there's variations on that theme. You can, if you're doing $5 million in revenue with 5 people, wow, those people are highly taxed and they're not sleeping and they're ready to put themselves out of their misery. So the happy medium is having enough people to satisfy the types of customers you're doing, and that's a fine line. So if you don't have your financials right, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we can talk more about financials, but it's a yin yang thing. And
I think it's all those metrics, right? I
it's
mean,
not spokes on a wheel. It's a yin yang.
Oh, well, and the financials are really your compass to figure out all those factors that you need to figure out in terms of
and
where
then you
you need to
experiment
go.
with price point, and maybe you can't get that kind of price. So maybe you have too many people to support the kind of customers that you're used to providing. Do I have the right talent to make those customers happy? Well, maybe I need to upgrade talent so I can upgrade my customers. Maybe I've got an upgraded customer. Whoops, I better hire some upgraded talent to go with that. So that's the flow of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So having your finger on the pulse of just about everything we talked about today, which again we could go on for hours about, but we only have a few minutes. I just think that's really fundamental. So having a good quality MSP.
Very good. That's perfect. A perfect way to wind up that topic. And gentlemen, do you have any closing thoughts today before we wrap this up?
Bruce, you go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, back to this kind of whole topic and putting a bow on it. It is a little ultimately sort of growth and retention are the two things, right? Really, am I growing consistently year over year? You can't do any of that without these measurements and metrics and understanding where you are, right? And the retention of your customers, the retention of your employees speaks to the quality, right? You're assuming service, they can do what they say they're going to do, right? They go in to solve a problem and they can solve it, right? But the retention of customers is a defining element of, hey, is this a quality MSP? Because some of them are just they're getting a new one every once in a while, but they're going out the back door. They're not keeping them. Therefore, they're staying flat. So they still may, again, back to the lifestyle. They're in business, but it's not quite, it's not quite quality. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let's bring that back into mergers and acquisitions. So if you think about everything you just said, a lot of the buyers are looking at the quality of the customer, but also do you have customer retention? A lot of our clientels have that as a specific KPI item in their due diligence to specifically voir dire and figure out, what kind of customer retention do you have? What kind of track record do you have on customer retention? It's one of the top things that Evergreen looks at. I know Evergreen's a popular company. Everybody knows who that is. It's one of their top things they look at is your customer retention.
Churn rate, things like
churn rate. Yeah, things like that. So that it brings it back to, to be a desirable candidate company, even also to be a good buyer. All of these metrics are really important if you're going to be a buyer. So I think that what we're talking about is how it relates to how you run your company every day, but making money now is something you can demonstrate to somebody else so that it looks sustainable, that you're going to continue making money after we buy the company or after you join their team, things like that.
Very good. Very good. A lot to think about for everyone. But also thank you for phrasing it in a way too, where it gives people a way to focus on what they need to focus on. And so thanks to you both. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Bruce, for joining me today.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to next month. And if you have suggestions for topics for us, please send them my way. I will put my email in the show notes.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye.